Good morning and warm welcome everyone. This is much awaited session of the day. Let me start by introducing the moderator of the day. To understand the feminine principle and give dignity to the woman's minds and body, a writer must be gifted with an androgynous imagination. This is a quote from the introduction of the book titled as Tagore and the Feminine by Professor Malashri Lal. It's an honor for me to introduce her as the moderator of the session. Ma'am is former professor of Department of English, University of Delhi. Ma'am has authored and edited more than 16 books, including the most recent, co-authored with Namita Gokhale, Betrayal of Hope, a play on the life of Michael Madhusudan Dutt in 2020. Ma'am continues to serve on juries for book awards. Ma'am is currently a member of English Advisory Board of Sahitya Academy. There is no one in academics who isn't familiar with this name, Professor Malashri Lal. Thank you so much, ma'am, for moderating the session. And now I request you to introduce the artist of our much awaited session and take over the e-platform from here. Over to you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for that generous introduction. I'm indeed delighted to be at Shalini Lit Fest, and already the morning has been richly containing of so many thoughts, philosophies, a wonderful book release about the life of Professor Khosla, the introductory remarks by Professor Manju Jedka and her team, and my friend Mukesh Williams. I'm in touch with him again, thanks to Shalini. I'm looking forward to the session very much. And to be able to talk to Mahesh Dattani this morning is indeed for me a dream come true. I have read his works for many years, guided theses, discussed his plays with many of my students, but to actually have a live conversation with him is again something thanks to Shalini University's Lit Fest. So Mahesh Dattani, as you all know, has shaped Indian English theatre for the last 25 years or more. The scene was not terribly promising when he came on board, but it was his innovation, his creativity, his very bold thematic thrusts that brought about a huge development in the way Indian English theatre was to progress and increase and improve and develop over the many years. And Mahesh Dattani continues to be a very active participator in this situation as a director, writer, actor, playwright, and teacher. So indeed, very welcome to this session, Maheshji. The materials that he covers, the themes that he looks at are, of course, familiar to many of you, but I do want to remind ourselves that he goes into previously undocumented areas as well. For instance, the challenges of urban space, particularly Mumbai, the challenges faced by sexually different people. He covers the emotions and sentiments with the deepest of sensitivity and wonderful, arresting plots. Sahitya Academy's award for English writing went to Mahesh Dattani ji for his collection, Final Solutions and Other Plays. Dance Like a Man is a book, play, and film that all of us are familiar with. The person who is able to talk with equal sensitivity about communal tensions, about personal histories, the life of a hijra, the life of men and women fighting against gender stereotypes. This is our Mahesh Dattani. Welcome very much, Maheshji. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you.
So may I begin by taking you down memory lane a little bit. This self-reflective book that you have, which is called Me and My Plays, in the introduction, I was a little surprised to find this statement, and I'm quoting you. Perhaps this was really my quest to find something meaning in my limited range as theatre practitioner with no real grounding. To top it all, I was handicapped with English. I had nothing except my passion. Now, why would there be such diffidence in you? You're such a wonderful writer, and of course, your English is immaculate. And of course, there is a deep sensitivity to the regional awareness, the regional languages around your characters.
Yes, Dr. Lal, yeah. Excuse me. Well, this I'm writing about a time before I wrote my second play. I was just one play old, and I had yet to write Dance Like a Man. So in that sense, when the period I'm talking about was a transition period for me, because that's when I met my gurus, my dance teachers, in fact, who were Bharatnatyam exponents of Bharatnatyam. And to observe them so steeped in tradition and yet so modern in their outlook and behavior. So you didn't see any of the orthodoxy that one associates with tradition. This was truly an inspiration, and the kind of dedication and passion they had, I felt that they were so connected to their roots. But I felt, and even today, I feel rootless. I don't have those kind of roots that go so deep, and provide some kind of bridge or continuity with the past. But at the same time, I think I've understood that you don't need roots. If you have wings, then you can fly as well. So I do see myself as a little bird sitting on the tree of tradition. So I could fly when I want to, and I could perch when I choose to. So I guess that might explain that quote. This was the time when I began to reflect on the kind of theater I was doing, because before that, as a director, I was working on mostly Eurocentric plays. I was doing, if it was a comedy, it was Alan Ayckbourn, and I did attempt a Greek tragedy, which was quite a disaster. But very soon after meeting my gurus and seeing the performance of Sonal Mansingh, again, someone like Sonal is so articulate, so erudite, and so current. This I'm talking about what 40 years, 35 years ago, and to see her do the her interpretation of Geet Govindam, Jayadeva's poetry, very very sort of evocative of the rasa of love between Radha and Krishna, and to see that come alive right in front of me, that was magical. So I endeavor through this hopeless language, English, that has sort of infected many of us, to somehow try and capture this kind of magic that comes, this aura that just comes from continuity. It doesn't necessarily have to be a representation of tradition, but I think continuity is important. But I think at this stage in my life, I realized that you make your own traditions. That things don't stop. Art movements have a way of continuing. That you may be at the beginning of something, but there will be a middle to follow, and perhaps later there might be a decadence. So these sort of stages of art movement, of from naivete to sophistication to decadence, you're just a part of this as an individual.
Very interesting that you use the metaphor of the bird and flight, because that's also the way writers have an overview of society and situations that they reflect on and then turn into a creative act. So let me focus on Dance Like a Man, which many of our students and our faculty are attending to because it forms a part of curriculum in many universities in India and abroad. It's a most unusual kind of a play, at least when it was written. I remember there was so much attention because no one had actually looked at the challenges of gender stereotyping the way you had done through the metaphor of dance. And it is the story of the two Bharatnatyam dancers, Jairaj and Ratna. And it reconstructs the idea of masculinity. And Jairaj breaks through the stereotype and the macho male image that patriarchy has passed on to us. And it's a profession of dancing that is usually associated with feminine grace. Now, this challenge of overcoming socially assumed boundaries of masculinity and femininity is extremely important. And in my own work, with my interest in feminism, my admiration for Sonal Mansingh, I share that with you, that creative writers and creative critics have to constantly review what does masculinity and femininity mean? And surely there must not be rigid boundaries. So, would you say that your play shows us to be very burdened by patriarchal codes? And one of the reasons why this play and the film became so popular is because all of us are surrounded by stereotypes and all of us want to break it but don't know how. So the story of Jairaj is an example of how it can be done.
Yes, I think the story of Jairaj and Ratna, because they're both facing the societal constructs of gender. That just as you have a construct of masculinity, you have a construct of femininity. So I think it's a constant dance, again, if I may use the metaphor, between what how you contribute to society and the aspects of your own identity and construction that you're willing to accommodate society, and how much of it is your individual expression and identity. So it's a constant dance. I'm sure even in the feminist movement, there was a time when feminism had a very, very strong counter masculinism point of view, that we're seeing everything from the male point of view for thousands of years. So let's just switch and see the feminine point of view. And then, of course, the questions come about as to what is masculinity, what is femininity, what is are these binaries, and do we really exist on a range between these binaries? So what is it? These are questions that need to be addressed on and on. That there is no fixed answer to this. That as society evolves or changes, these concepts and constructions also need to change or be reconsidered.
Indeed so. And the play works very effectively because one actually sees this discussion against binaries on the stage and through a story. So the impact is much greater than just reading discourses and arguments on a piece of paper or even through fiction and poetry. Every medium has its own kind of an impact. And I do believe that the kind of theater that you do and write has a huge impact on the viewers and on the readers, because you can actually see the masculinity femininity debate in action. So let me move on to another theme that you have foregrounded, again most unusual in theatrical writing, and this is the theme of disability. And I'm here now referring to your play Tara, which is about a doubly marginalized girl child. And it's a very poignant situation because Siamese twins are born, and the Siamese twins who are conjoined have 3 legs between them. And one leg has to be attached to one child, and the other child will be left bereft of the second leg. And again, going back to patriarchal beliefs and customs, the decision is to give the second leg to the boy child and not to the girl child. So the girl child from infancy is doomed to live with only one leg. So it's a surreal kind of a situation. But I'm intrigued, what could have been the source of this very imaginative presentation that you make? Imaginative and also highly effective. So, what is the origin of this unusual plot, I wonder? And along with that, how much of your plot idea, the seed of an idea, comes from news reports or people who have told you stories, and how much of it is simply your writer's imagination?
Good question, a very good question. I think it's a marriage of both. Tara, the play we're talking about, had to rely on imagination because it's a complete medical improbability that you would have twins of opposite sexes who are conjoined. Conjoined twins are invariably of the same sex. It's something to do with, how the ovum is fused. I've forgotten the medical details. I wrote the play 40 years ago. In that sense, the origin of that was actually a medical journal that I was reading at a dentist's office. And there was this case study about a set of conjoined twins who were conjoined from the chest down to the pelvic area, and how it was those days. I guess you didn't have MRIs then. I don't think you did. It took a lot of preparation to figure out which twin was supplying more blood to the third leg. Because when they separate them, the chances of the leg surviving on the one who was supplying more blood would be greater. So that was the origin, and I thought, wow, what if they were boy and girl? That decision is not going to be a medical decision. That's going to be a social decision then. And so I guess that's how it started. So I do see Tara also very much in the theme of gender conflict, which is exacerbated by a patriarchal sort of code, more than the disability. The disability actually becomes a metaphor. That in that sense, I feel both the boy and the girl are left disabled because neither of them got the second leg. Right, it didn't survive on the boy. So in that sense, you're disabling both. So it's because that's also the guilt that he has to live with, that he denied his sister a whole body. So in that sense, I think it still is about the of gender, the conflict between society and gender identity.
Very true. I mean, disability here is a metaphor for society's disability to reorganize its gender understanding and its gender sensitivities, which takes me to the third point, and that is how you have brought in transgenders, hijras into your plays, again, in a most sensitive way. You've talked about child abuse, and any kind of sexual violence is traumatizing and usually leads to silence and internalizing and mental disabilities. And you've talked about these so called unspeakable acts of human violence and society's silence in several of your plays. I'm thinking about 30 Days in September, which is about two women who suffered incest. And one doesn't want to call them victims, they're really survivors.
Survivors.
And that vocabulary in society has luckily changed. And then you've also talked about hijras and homosexuals, transsexuals in plays such as On a Muggy Night in Mumbai. There's another one, Bravely Fought the Queen, like the word queen there, and Do the Needful. And particularly, I want to talk to you about Seven Steps Round the Fire. The title itself, as in many of your other plays, is hugely significant because the seven steps are those of the marriage ritual according to Hindus, and that's how a marriage couple is actually sanctified into a social identity. Now, this play revolves around the murder mystery of a eunuch, and the hijras are some of the least understood people in our society. Biologically, medically, socially, they are the marginalized among the marginalized. And you have exposed the dehumanized conditions in which they live and function, their own structures and hierarchies in which there is abuse too. But you've also shown this to be a society that we actually need to understand. They didn't want to be this way, but this is how nature has made them. And you raise the empathy level for such transgenders. So we'd like to hear more about your thoughts on the subject and why you brought them into your play.
Yes, I think the operative word in transgender is trans, right? That there is a transitive nature of gender that's present in transgender, and what the play really focuses on is the gender hierarchy. That the hierarchy is that you have man as number one, you have woman as number two, and you have transgender as number three, right? So what is the power play that exists between these three categories of gender, right? Even transgender has so many subcategories, and so I think the focus really is on the relationship between between Suresh, that is Uma's husband, Uma, who has been brought up to be uber feminine, but discovers that she is actually has a spirit of adventure in her, and it's through her agency that we see the world of the hijras, and she solves the murder mystery. It's a murder mystery, that's the genre of the play. And how does the man relate to transgender? How does the man relate to women? And it gets a little sort of murky when Uma and Suresh are unable to conceive, and we come to know it's because Suresh has a low sperm count. So, where does that leave him from his own construction of masculinity? Right? So, which means he's at conflict with himself. He feels somewhere deep down that he's not really a man, because he has a low sperm count, and he's constantly denying it throughout the play, and I don't think he even accepts it in the end. So in that sense, we're looking at identities, we're looking at pride of identity as well, and we're also looking at how important sexual identity is to us. So I guess that's what I've attempted to issue to address in that. And seven steps around the fire, yes, absolutely, it is the saptapadi, the with each step you take a vow of togetherness, and the irony being that the transgender, especially the hijra community, because hijras are a community of transgender, not all transgenders can be termed as hijra, is that they are invited at weddings and at childbirths, and those are the two roles that nature and culture deny them, right? That they can't marry, and nature doesn't give them the power of conception, right? So I think that's the irony, and also the marital conflict, that yes, Uma and Suresh have taken those vows, but what do they really mean? I don't think she wants to lead a life of subversion, and he is very unsure about who Uma is. Does he really know his wife? So it's those are the dramatic revelations in the play, and I think that's what the play is about. Yes.
Indeed, it questions many factors relating to assumptions about matrimony and spousal relations, and this whole idea of reproduction within a heterosexual normative and issues of that kind. I'll move on to a query about the medium that is used. As a playwright, you're creating a play, but that can go on the stage, it can also go on to the radio. And you have indeed written radio plays for the BBC Radio 4, and these have also been foregrounding the underclass. The two that I remember, one is called Clearing the Rubble, which was written in response to the 2001 earthquake in Gujarat. And it takes a very ironic view of the so called rescue work that is taken up by the government agencies. The other radio play is on a completely different theme, and it's called The Tale of a Mother Feeding Her Child. And this is a very powerful monologue of an English woman who revisits India to save the family of her long lost lover. Now, in the broadcast mode, would the dramatic requirements of playwriting be different from those that you intend for the stage? And if so, then in what way?
Yes, there are common grounds, of course, but I think the major difference is that in radio, you're working with a soundscape, right? Whereas on stage, you an audience is also a spectator, right? We use the word audience for audio, but in the theater, the patron is an audience and a spectator. Whereas the radio play, you have to rely entirely on the soundscape to evoke the imagined setting in the ear of the audience. So in that sense, I think the music of the script becomes very important. And when we use music in drama, B.V. Karanth had said something fascinating. He said that even noise, when used in the theater, should be used like music. So I think it's the music of the piece, the rhythm in the text and in the sounds that you create, which then evokes this imagined environment. Whereas the stage, you have the advantage of being both a visual and an oral medium. So actions could be very visual. You could have silences, you could have people moving around, very specifically telling your story through their actions, through their physical actions. Whereas in the radio play, it's the actions are completely what do you say, represented by sound and speech.
Precisely. When we're talking about stage play, and I'd like to ask you a few things about the performative aspect of your plays, and you're very involved in that. In all your stage plays, there is a great deal of emphasis on the use of space and that of lighting. Now, as a writer and a director, do you have some broad guidelines in your mind as to how this spatial and the lighting is to be used, or do you leave it to the director? How does it actually happen? Because you're entirely right in saying that the impact of a play in action is very much what you do in that space.
Absolutely, absolutely. For me, I think the spatial delineations, especially of heights, I like to work with all six dimensions if I can, up and down and left and right and forward and backward. Because ultimately, what is it that you have in the theater, right? You have seven notes in music, right? And you have the graphic potential of cinema, where your settings can be very fluid, and you could sort of play with those images with cuts and things. But all you have in the theater is time, space, and body. And I think it's how you use these. These are the three notes of theater, and how you use them is very, very important in your storytelling. So, to come to your question, are these adhered by other directors or producers? Very often not. But what they do is that they provide the playwright's intention, how the playwright sees these things. For example, in Tara, memory and present time, where it's the older boy twin who is narrating the story. They merge when he steps off the platform, and then you have the doctor who created the separation, who performed the surgery, acting like very much like a showman in a television interview. And so all those things are part of the storytelling, and it's entirely the director's prerogative then as to how they wish to translate it, if they want to, in some other way, if possible. And there are examples of some very, very good and very sort of dramatic and forceful translations where my specific instructions are not adhered to, but there is something else that takes its place, which I think is what theatre is, the art of collaboration. So there's no sense of ownership in that sense.
That's very wonderful that you see theatre as an art of collaboration. I'm sure the audience and I would love to hear you read something from your plays.
Okay,
Please,
sure. Well,
maybe a short passage so we get a flavor from the writer of the play.
okay. Now, here's the thing. I'm not much of an actor, although people think I am an actor. I'm not. So I've just chosen two monologues because it's easier to read. And this is from the play you mentioned, 30 Days in September. And this is one monologue is Mala's interaction with her counselor, her therapist, right, where she feels that she has survived the scars of abuse in childhood. So she is at this moment, she feels that she's healed completely. But then, of course, in the next scene, when the uncle, the perpetrator, visits them, she has another demon to tackle, and in the end, it's her a monologue to her mother through a letter. So I'll read both. They're very short. Um, so this is in Act Two, so it's somewhere in the middle of the play. It's like taking off the bandages on your face after a bloody car crash that left your face all scarred beyond recognition, as if you didn't have a face at all. To wake up after many, many years as if from a coma, and to let the bandages come off, and suddenly discover a whole new face again. All of a sudden, you feel that you are entitled to life. I could smile again. I could be a little girl again. Not again, but for the first time. At 30 plus, I am the little girl I never was. I want to see movies, taste ice cream, really taste it, feel the high from the sugar, tell the difference between flavors. I hear sounds I never cared to hear before, birds, temple bells. My senses are working again. I could touch this chair and feel the chair touch me. My whole body can feel. And for the first time, I enjoyed sex. Truly enjoyed it for its tactile pleasure, not as a craving for some kind of approval. I came alive and experienced what it means to be really loved. And for once, I could look at Deepak in the eyes and say, I love you to him, and believe it when he says the same to me.
Very moving.
Yeah, this is based on on a real interview I had, and a lot of what I just read out were the actual words she spoke. And this is after years of therapy. You're looking at about 7, 8 years of going through therapy, right? And yet you never really healed. That's the the horror of abuse. Now, here, this is it's like a letter to her mother, but on stage she transcends the space and actually enters her mother's temple area. And for the first time, you see the women really bonding. Because all her anger, which through therapy she realizes, which was against her uncle, she transferred it on to the mother, not realizing that the mother is going through her trauma of having been abused as a child by her brother, and the brother, because perpetration is repetitive. There's a pattern. It doesn't stop at one. So, dear mother, it just isn't easy to forget. Occasionally, I catch his reflection in the glass of a subway, hiding behind a newspaper or pretending to be asleep. But it doesn't matter. I can live with it now. He, as a person, is not important to me anymore. While I accused you of not recognizing my pain, you never felt any anger at me for not recognizing yours. We were both struggling to survive, but I never acknowledged your struggle. Ma, no matter where I am, I always think of you. I want you to know that I'm listening, waiting for you to speak. I promise you I will listen. I'm waiting for a sign from you to say that you have forgiven me. Say something, even a whisper. And the scrim wall around the prayer room rises. Mala is overjoyed. Shanta, that's the mother, continues with her prayers. Mala walks up to her and kneels. I want to ask you whether you need my help. Please let me be of help. Gently turning her mother's face towards her. It's not your fault, mother, just as it wasn't my fault. Please tell me that you've forgiven me for blaming you. Please tell me that. The mother turns back to her God and continues with her prayers. Mala slowly rests her head in her mother's lap. I know you will, mother. I know you have. And that's the end of the play.
Very beautiful writing and beautiful reading. I don't know why you say that you're not too much of an actor. In fact, there's a question here from Manju Jedka. She said, what is Maheshji working on now? Would you like to reveal in advance? Would you?
Well, I am ready to make the announcement. I'm writing a sequel to Dance Like a Man.
Oh,
It's
wow.
30 years later. What does art mean in an environment which is very politically charged? So do artists take on a different role now? That's the play, what the play addresses.
So that's an announcement at the Shulini Lit Fest. That's amazing. Indeed. So here's another query. This is from Ashu Khosla. For budding writers, any tips on how should they approach dialogue writing?
Okay. Yeah, this is a big one. Uh, well, I think first of all, to sort of meditate a little bit on the word dialogue, because most often novice writers and sometimes even professional writers, we mistake dialogue for conversation, right? I think dialogue is some people call it heightened conversation, but as the name suggests, right, it's dialogue. It's an exchange between two or more people, and I think it's, if you ask me, it's an exchange of expression. That I think good dialogue writing conveys a lot more than what is actually being spoken. And I think that is the craft. And I think good dialogue also creates the right silences. that the silences sometimes speak the subtext uh, much more than what is actually spoken.
That's very important because your plays use silence in very creative ways. And especially when it is combined with the correct lighting on the stage, it has a huge impact on the audience. So we're coming towards the end of the session, and I would like to take you back to the self reflective mode about your work. You have very obviously multifaceted capabilities and not only a dedicated playwright, and we shall look forward to the new one, but you're also a very talented director, actor, a filmmaker, and a teacher and a screenplay writer. So, which is this personality that you enjoy the most getting into?
Well, I think it's what I'm doing in the moment. Sometimes that's what I enjoy the most. If I'm writing, I enjoy writing. And sometimes it's the opposite. Like when I'm writing, I feel, oh my God, I can't get this. Why am I not directing? Right? And when I'm directing, I say, oh my God, this is such a brilliant play. Why don't I write something like this? Right? So it's a again, it's a constant dance of artistic identities.
Well, do you really feel that Indian writing in English theatre has now achieved a certain kind of a maturity and sophistication of expression? There are a lot of young writers out there. So, what are your thoughts about the state of Indian theatre in English at present?
Well, I think it's far better now because it's less derivative. Because the with the language we also sort of derive the culture, right? So for a long time, English language was associated with westernized people. Yes, it is the English language, but why does it have to be westernized? Because it's it's just another language in the storehouse of languages that we have. It's the wealth of India, and I think just as yoga has gone abroad and is popular and isn't seen as a Hindu identified ritual anymore. They've discovered the science behind yoga. I think it's the same with Indian English that we do. It's no longer a language of the colonials. It is very much a native language now.
Oh, thanks. I'll take this one last question and pass it on to you from Sakshi Sundaram. Is there any space for improvisation on stage during your plays? Has there been any instance when an actor's improvisation has taken you by surprise or inspired you?
Yeah, well, that's true. The thing is that I am fairly sort of closed in my writing, in the sense it offers a closed structure. So it may be a bit old school, but I work on the text and I close it with a structure before giving it to a director and actors. So the first part of the question, is there any space? There is little space, a little space, but not too much space for improvisation. But I have attempted writing something which is solely meant for improvisation. I did something for the theater students. I did just a very loose scenario of audiences at a Ram Leela, and I just mentioned one line descriptions of the characters who come and go. And the idea was that 10 actors will enter and exit and come as another character, so that by the end of it, we should feel that there are at least 500 people there watching the Ram Leela. So that was more of an exercise, but it was very interesting because what in the improvisation, what they did is that they ran the soundtrack of the Ram Leela being played, right? So during the Sita Haran and all that, some of the characters were completely weepy and So and the women, right? And they created this fabulous sort of mise en scene of characters, and each one, just the challenge was to come for a minute, establish your character, and leave, right? And the actors took on the challenge and did something quite interesting. So that was a really good experiment. But I must say I'm a slightly old school, and I do close the play before, in terms of structure and in terms of what is to be said. But within that, I think there is scope for interpretation. Definitely, because theatre is collaborative, and at every stage you're actually undergoing a translation.
I think that's a beautiful note on which to end this session. The Ramlila reminds us of the continuity of the Indian traditions of theatre, and your experiment brings us to the awareness that you can always improvise and do something different. So 10 actors creating 500 characters is as much in the Ramlila tradition as it could ever have been. And this is what is so wonderful about Indian literature as such, that the past and the present has a continuity and yet a creative disjunction. So thank you very much, Mahesh Dattani. A very great pleasure to speak to you and to listen to your responses and your vast experience and
It is
writing.